So I found an interesting conversation on Reddit that I wanted to discuss. And I know it's Reddit, a lot of it is not particularly thoughtful or meaningful, but some corners of Reddit are quite interesting. So UK politics, I think, is one of those corners, at the moment at least. In 6 months, 12 months, who knows. But at the moment, it can be a very different conversation depending on the thread that it's talking about. So here we've got Rupert Lowe MP from Restore Britain. He wants a meaningful debate about a triple lock which creates division between the young and the old. If you're not in the UK, the triple lock is a financial test that the government use to decide how much the old age pension increases every year. And the triple lock is quite controversial, partly because it costs a lot of money for the nation, which has to be paid for somehow. And it also means that pensioners are, in many cases, a lot better off than working people, as it says here, because it simply isn't financially sustainable in its current form. So I'm going to read a little bit of what he says. So I'm with the young British men and women who feel crushed under inflated house prices, stagnating wages, record tax burden, and just generally a piss poor standard of living that is failing embarrassingly far behind countries we once competed with. This is all very true. A huge tax burden. I think the British government might be financially and in other ways bigger than it's ever been right now. Huge house prices, wages that are stagnating for working people. So it's stagnating wages for working people, but not for pensioners. For pensioners, it goes up every year. So he carries on. Is this the status quo you want? Because if it is, there are a variety of parties to vote for. So basically every other party, if you want the triple lock to continue, pretty much. Ask yourself, does the current model work for you? Commuting 2+ hours a day from some pokey flat in a part of London that increasingly resembles the third world, all to get taxed out of your arse for a job you hate with no prospect of starting your own business or owning your own home because the rotten state takes so much of your cash. One thing, at least, that's really interesting about Rupert Lowe is kind of the language that he used. So, taxed out of your arse, he says here, for example. And I think higher up, he also said piss poor, a really piss poor standard of living. So it's noticeable that he's willing to use much more direct and colloquial language, like here as well. Earn a bit more money, bang, gone. Gather enough capital to start a business, that's a different world of pain. HMRC takes such pleasure in making it as difficult as possible. Honestly, I hate these people so much. Young tradesmen and women all over Britain waking up at 5 a.m, working 12 hours plus every day. Why? For what? For who? This is all very true. This is a good description of what Britain is like today. This is what the problems are, I think, pretty much. So I'm going to skip forward and to see what the reaction is. So here we go. Top comment here. Regardless of my thoughts on his actual policies, this is an excellent pitch. I can see it getting foothold. So this is a person who doesn't really like Restore, doesn't really like Rupert Lowe, but actually agrees with what he's saying. And if we scroll down a little bit further, as much as I despise a lot of Lowe's policies, if I had to choose between him or Farage to become PM, I'd be leaning towards Lowe. And the reply down here, same, and I'm centre left, believe it or not. And then this commenter actually goes on to talk about a related issue, so not about the triple lock, not about pensioners. It just really is irking me that I put in 40 hours a week of graft and I just know so many people just outside my social circle who are so clearly taking the piss and raising 4 or 5 little scroats who will also take the piss. So I presume here taking the piss meaning they're not in work, so they're taking welfare. And they've also got 4 or 5 little scroats who will also take the piss, who will also be on welfare. So since about the 1980s in the UK, we've developed a social class of people who are generationally on welfare, who may never actually have a job, and their children will never have a job here. They will basically just use the system for their entire lives. So this is basically the choice in the UK. You can put in your 40 hours a week, you can work hard, or you can go on welfare and never work again. And if you become a pensioner, if you choose to go on welfare, you'll get bigger rises in your income than the average person who takes wages, than the average person who actually works, who has a proper working week. Why would you want to take that deal? Another person, very good pitch, not sure how much of it he genuinely believes though. That's a completely reasonable reaction, I think, to be in the UK, to not believe politicians. If you spent 30 years listening to people like Keir Starmer or David Lammy, why would you absolutely believe them? Another one here. I think the triple lock is unsustainable. The sooner we grasp the nettle and fix it, the better for everyone. Another one. If he sticks to this, he'd be winning a good chunk of votes. The triple lock doesn't work right with supply-led inflation anyway. It means the state pension over years goes up by more than inflation because wages lag inflation. Basically, they get a double bonus when most workers are worse off. Yeah, so the pensioners, I mean, they should be looked after to some degree, but it's maybe getting a bit ridiculous. And it's getting that way because pensioners vote and young people don't. And there's a lot of pensioners at the moment. Another one here. I'm in general on the left of things, but I have to say that's a hell of a pitch. While Farage is filling his ranks with the same Tories who put us in this mess, Lowe seems to be determined to provide an actual alternative. So another person who considers themselves on the left of politics is actually noticing that Restore Britain is saying something quite sensible. Another interesting comment here. I genuinely think the only way to end the triple lock is to make voting as compulsory as possible. Major parties would soon change tack when they know they've got to appeal to young voters. Yeah, that's the problem. Voting is like an old person's game, pretty much. I largely don't like Lowe or his party, but he is bang on about work from home, I'm going to presume. Let private companies set their own policies and don't add another layer of micromanagement to satisfy the boomers. Another one here. I'm not enough of a fool to vote them in over this single issue, but the triple lock needs to go, and I hope the more sane parties recognise that fact. So, like I say, our UK politics, it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes there's left-wing people, sometimes there's right-wing people, but I think it's interesting that Rupert Lowe and Restore seem to be getting noticed by left-wing people, and maybe some left-wingers actually agree with him as well. For example, this one here, say what you want about Restore, but so far they are honestly the only ones who have directly appealed to young voters. So, yes, absolutely, Rupert Lowe, he speaks very clearly, he speaks very sensibly, I think, and people appreciate being spoken to in that way, I believe. I mean, if you listen to Keir Starmer, he just doesn't have any sincerity whatsoever, and there's definitely room for a person who talks to the electorate like adults, and that's what Rupert Lowe seems to be going for. If we see here, God, I hate this is coming from Rupert Lowe, as a 30-year-old, none of this is untrue. That's the first politician I can remember seeing articulating the stacked deck against younger generations. I have to say, this guy absolutely gets the problems. So it looks like Rupert Lowe is tapping into something that hasn't been tapped into for a while. Thanks for watching.